Thank you everyone for your patience and for waiting. My name is Kelly Gordeau. I work with AMGC, and thank you for joining AMGC's webinar series, 10 Ways to Succeed in Australian Manufacturing. Today is focused on Way 1, Recognise Australian Manufacturing's Strength. I will now pass it over to our host, Michael Sharp. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Kelly. Great to be here. I'm in the car, or what I like to prefer to call it is the mobile Zoom studio. So for those of you who've joined me before, it's great to catch up with you again. We plan to have it here at lunchtime so you can enjoy some lunch or maybe grab a coffee. So sit back and relax, and look forward to introducing our speakers. Just some housekeeping, I guess, to start with, is that we are recording this and you'll be able to watch it at another time as well. So we are recording. Please submit any questions to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and I'll do my best to get through some of those questions as we go through the next hour. And the report that we're discussing today can be downloaded on our AMGC website. So look forward to you getting engaged through that. And feel free at any time to reach out on LinkedIn. And for those who are out there, I'm happy to come and talk with you or take your emails and questions at a later date as well. So feel free to engage in any way. Great to have my colleague Mike Grogan joining us here today. Mike's in lockdown in Victoria, but glad you could join us, Mike. And we'll also have Ty Hermans, the Managing Director from the Evolve Group, joining us shortly. And great to have Peter Hook, who's the General Manager from Bosch Australia Manufacturing Solutions. So thanks for joining us, guys. I wanted to talk a bit about the report to get things started, and then we're going to ask a poll question. So for the report, many of you that are here today, and I believe the latest count was we've got about 250 participants, which is just fantastic. But we had more than 30 focus groups at roundtable discussions all around the country, 93 individuals from manufacturing companies, industry bodies, government agencies, and the local universities as well. The industry bodies alone represented approximately 370 manufacturers all across Australia. So some great feedback there. We also did a survey of 1,000 of our members, 1,000 members from the Australian public, so to get their feedback from the general public. And we also surveyed 1,000 students as part of the focus group. So pretty broad cross-section of the Australian community, I'm sure you would agree. But at this stage, we might ask the first poll question, Kelly, if you wouldn't mind putting that up. And so the question is, what percentage of Australians think that manufacturing is important or very important to the economy? If you'd like to put your response in there, and we'll see what you all think about that question. I'm sure you'll agree it's a very important question, and probably pertinent for me to raise that the 10 Ways report, all this work that went into the research was pre-COVID, so before March and before lockdowns. So what an interesting thing that the amount of change we've seen in the last several months, and we know now that even more people are talking about manufacturing. So hopefully you've put in your response there to those questions: 65%, 20%, or 35%. What do Australians think about manufacturing being important or very important to the economy? Why don't we find out the answer to that, Kelly? So most of you think that that your answer is 65%, and you'd be right. So 65%, and again, this is before COVID, thought that manufacturing was important or very important to the economy. So imagine now that people are talking about reshoring manufacturing back to Australia. All the first weeks of COVID, when we saw our local breweries and distilleries making hand sanitizer, and one of our members, Manly Spirits, I was able to get some of their hand sanitizer that they produced at their distillery, and they were innovative. They made a gin aromaed hand sanitizer, and so I thought the way they were able to get their message out was very important. Glad you could join us, Ty, and we'll get to you at the moment. I know we had some great conversations in the early stages of the pandemic, and glad you could join us here today. So yeah,
thanks,
certainly we know that everyone's talking about manufacturing, and so that's what we're here today to talk about, the 10 ways to succeed in Australian manufacturing. It's our webinar series over the next 10 weeks where we'll touch on all of those 10 ways. So I look forward to you joining us again next week. But way one today is recognising Australian manufacturing strength. Mike, we saw the poll results there, so most people do think that manufacturing is valued, but it was great to join you across Tasmania and particularly regional Victoria late last year and meet some of our members and talk with them about the current state of play. It must be difficult to be in lockdown at the moment.
It certainly is, and sympathies to everyone. And as Mike said, this is the first in our series of 10, but sort of just getting the bugs out of the system. But I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners in the land in which we're meeting, and we're all sort of on different lands over the country today, and that's the beauty of having these webinars. I'm on Wurundjeri country, part of the Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to elders past and present on your behalf as well, and look forward to the day when they're recognised in the Constitution of Australia. But as Mike said, we're certainly playing it close to home in Victoria, and I was saying to Peter before that it's been about 7, 8 months since I've been on an aeroplane, which is, I think, it's unheard of, and we're getting used to a new way of working. But equally, getting this number of manufacturers together, you can sit down at lunchtime, see a webinar like this, a series of 10 of them, have some communication and actually look at these things. That's one of the real positives that has come out of it, this technology, and where we've been able to communicate far more rapidly and talk to each other. And as you said, with the survey results, and the results were all pre-COVID, and I think that number, instead of 65 now, is right up into the 70s and almost 80%, where people actually have now had a sharp recognition of what manufacturing does and can do for the country.
It was great to see the Prime Minister come out early and tell us all that, Australia is never going to run out of food. We didn't need to rush the supermarkets. And I've heard it say that, some people are calling it the great toilet paper crisis of 2020. And so we've certainly been through the ups and downs over the last few months, there's no doubt. Ty, I'm going to come to you shortly because I know you engage with a lot of your local members of parliament as far as getting the word out for manufacturing. And if I look at way one, the first part of our 10 ways report, it's about manufacturers are typically proud of their business. So talking to you all across Australia, you're proud of the work you do, and rightly so. And yet you also feel that the general public and students do not value manufacturing as highly as they should. And so our research has shown that Australians do recognise the economic importance of manufacturing, and they're optimistic about manufacturing's future here in Australia. And all of those in the manufacturing community must raise their voices to change the misperceptions out there of Australian manufacturing. I think it's incumbent on all of us to do that. And Ty, you've been doing that in so many ways, reaching out to not just the local members of parliament, but you've been doing other interviews with media. So do you want to touch on some of the ways that you're being able to communicate the current state of play for manufacturing?
Yeah, I guess probably the easiest way to summarise it is we've got customers that we've been talking to for 4, even 5 years, those really slow burn customers slowly thinking about bringing their manufacturing back to Australia. Our phones, we've never been busier. Despite put the masks and face shields to the side, we've got customers that after 4 years of trying to decide whether they'd bring their manufacturing back to Australia, who were maybe haggling over a couple of percent in price either way, there is no question that they're bringing their manufacturing back. And our phones have rung off the hook since April, with customers just hell-bent on bringing their manufacturing back. Not at any cost, but cost is no longer the only sticking point. It's they're hell-bent on bringing it back. So, that talks to, I guess, other people and people that have got dollars on the line, seeing the value in Australian manufacturing, which is extremely exciting for us. Talking to different people about recognising this, the strengths or the value in Australian manufacturing, across the different both state and federal politically. I don't think there's any question that they don't recognise that there is value. But I still think there's more to do, and making them understand that there's real tangible value, not just in the Australian manufacturing piece, but just how many new jobs it actually delivers, and delivers very quickly. We've put about 40 extra people on already in the last few months. We're looking for another 8 full-time tool makers as we speak, another couple of CNC centres, and probably, as of the board meeting this morning, probably another 3 or 4 new injection moulding machines. So things are spooling up very, very quickly. And every time we win another job back, and I mean, as a manufacturing, we're bringing jobs as well with them very, very quickly. So it is a really tangible thing. I hope more and more people start to see that value very quickly.
Yeah, and I think it is the way that we communicate the message, and to put 40 people on over the last few months, I think that's just a testament to the work you've been doing, mate. It was great to visit your factory earlier in the year, and the new investments in equipment and reaching out to new employees. I mean, it's not easy to find the right staff, but you've certainly built a good brand there, and I recommend that everyone out there has a look at Ty's website at Evolve Group, and see the work that they're doing across such a wide range of manufacturing. Certainly an entrepreneurial flair, Ty, and you've
End of flirt.
You've certainly been having a go, mate, and I know through some of the conversations, having to reach out to the TGA and things around face mask production. So it's been one hell of a roller coaster for you, I know. But
yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. Peter, we want to talk about engaging with students, and I know that Bosch Manufacturing Australia, you do that in so many different ways, reaching out with the student community. For those who've joined me before from the mobile Zoom studio, you've heard me talk about, if we don't engage with the schools and the students, how do we expect them to want to get involved in our industry? What's the future prospect for manufacturing if we can't get the kids enthusiastic about doing the work that we want them to be involved with? So what's the sort of work you've been doing there, mate?
So Bosch has in its entirety in Australia has been doing a lot of work with students and sort of all levels of schooling. So from primary school, secondary school, and tertiary. In the primary schools section, we've been doing something called Learn at Bosch, and basically we're inviting Year 6 kids to come and have a look at what's happening at Bosch. In terms of the augmented reality, the coding, the robotics, the manufacturing that we're doing of the diodes, etc., on site. And we kicked this off in around 2018-19. We did about 17 schools and 17 schools and about 1,000 students came through the year before last, and then last year we were up to about 1,527 schools. We had grand plans for 2020, but that quite didn't work this year. But that was a really good experience for the kids, and they just get a very they spend nearly all day there, and they get a very good understanding of what we're doing. So it's been received very well. And in fact, sold out in terms of the schools wanting to come along and just can't make it. The other things we've been doing are things like we hosted the finals for Formula One in school at Bosch. Formula One, it sort of encompassed a lot of introduction to CAD and design, some marketing elements, and that was really exciting to have. We snuck that in just before all of the lockdowns at the beginning of this year around March time. So I think from memory there's a few hundred kids there, and from all across the country. And the other thing we do on an ongoing basis is that there's a number of students at the tertiary level that are always sort of every year that we have a number of those students on site at Bosch. So in my time, I have a couple. In the rest of the group, the rest of the area at Clayton, we'd probably have somewhere between 60 and 100 students at any one time. So we're certainly very much engaged with that student type community.
And that's a really hands-on project, isn't it? The Formula One. I mean, that must get those kids really excited being able to be involved with such a high-profile program.
Yeah, so I think the kids really enjoy it. I think the all of the people at Bosch that get to see it going on as well. All the employees really enjoyed seeing what was going on and experiencing that as well. So it was a win-win for both Bosch employees and also for the kids, I think.
Yeah. And certainly you guys have been busy during COVID. I mean, it was great to see the Minister, Karen Andrews, announce funding for the ventilator project. And the Prime Minister was upfront about, manufacturing here in Australia. And it's been good to see the momentum around that. I think we're up to nearly 1,000 of those units now being produced. And we're producing 2,000 ventilators here in Australia. So it certainly shows that we can bring local supply chains together in Australia to make complex products, high value complex products in such as a ventilator. But you guys are involved with that and certainly bringing people together. I think it's been quite a journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So our team was directly involved in producing all of the test equipment that was required to produce the ventilators. It was a very intense program. I think it was about 8 weeks from start to finish, and we were successful in achieving that. And I think the customer is very happy with what we did. And it was challenging, no doubt, because unfortunately, some of the equipment that we had to use in the ventilator test equipment, because it was an overseas design, we had to get from overseas, so that was challenging. But certainly, local manufacturers stepped up and were able to support as well, support what we needed. So one that came to mind was Anchor in Melbourne. Anchor were machining various bits and pieces for the ventilator test equipment. And the other areas were people that were providing testing, oxygen cleaning, and all that sort of stuff that we needed. It took a while to find some of these manufacturers, unfortunately, and they weren't in front of mine. But the end of the day, it was a really good result.
No, it's fantastic, and it's about getting that message out about manufacturing and letting people know what we're all doing, and what a time this year, of course. But, in our report, in the Team Ways report, we're saying that you need to educate yourself and others, about updating industry skills and knowledge. Mike Grogan's got the Manufacturing Academy there in the background, and it's certainly been a great platform. It was great to go out and interview our members all around Australia and having them share their experience about how they're transforming their business today with Industry 4. And so highly commend that you all have a look at the Manufacturing Academy and see some of those great interviews where people are really having a go. And ensuring the language that we all use can have a positive impact on the industry. Whether we're talking here on a Zoom call or talking to our local students at the schools, maybe just around the barbecue with your mates. I think it's incumbent on all of us to talk about the good work that is happening in manufacturing and encouraging people wanting to learn more about it. So I think you're doing some great work there at Bosch, Peter, but you've also been reaching out to those companies for advanced manufacturing equipment and advice on how to, around the digital transformation.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of areas we've been impacting that, if you like, to some extent. So I think in last year we did seminars on Industry 4 on a regular basis. We were probably doing 2 or 3 a month. And over the year, we talked to about 500 individuals. We're also part of a program that was with AMGC and AmTool to help small, medium enterprises to take that first step with relation to installing Industry 4 type products. But our business really is about providing, manufacturing. Manufacturing information, expertise, etc., to manufacturers, and we've been doing that a lot in the last year with a lot of companies that people just wouldn't even know existed, and you know the great things that they were doing. We've got a couple of manufacturers that are shipping millions of units of diagnostic equipment to the US and other parts of the world, and rapidly upscaling their organisations and their manufacturing capability in Australia. And when they do it, they take into account all of the the latest manufacturing concepts, including Industry 4 and the advanced manufacturing techniques, etc. So there's a lot going on in that space, and I said most people just don't know it's happening.
So as I say, this is just part of our series over the next 10 weeks, the 10 Ways report. And today we're talking about recognising Australia's manufacturing strength. This is just part one of the 10 ways to succeed in Australian manufacturing. And so I might come to Ty again. Ty, I think it's pretty spectacular that you've been able to put on 40 new staff over the last few months. Certainly the company's growing. You're obviously reaching new customers and that as well. But how would you like to talk more about how you reach out to the general community? I know you're strong on LinkedIn and Twitter and the like. Your website's very informative. But how important do you think it is to communicate across those sort of platforms?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. And I think that's where a lot of manufacturers do fall down. They're not out there promoting themselves. They sort of stick within their shed. It is really important. We're fortunate that we've got a reasonably strong marketing department in some of our other businesses, which help us on the manufacturing front. But even for our guys in our shed, it's something that we're always talking to them about and hoping that they do more of, is getting out there and telling the story about what they're doing, even on a daily basis. Because the one thing about manufacturing and to Peter's point, like engaging with students and so forth, it's actually a bloody exciting place to be inside those factories and seeing all the machines and seeing the output that comes out of it. So definitely, engaging on the different manufacturing platforms, showing things that you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, and showing people some of the amazing products that actually are manufactured in Australia, because there's a lot of it. And I think the more that people get to see the everyday items that they're actually using that are coming out of the sheds in Australia, the better.
And it must work good for your people too, right? If they're now working for you, they might be new to the Evolve Group, but if they can see the messages that you're putting out on LinkedIn and they see the blog perhaps on your website and any news items that way, that must be encouraging to your people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, seeing positive articles in the newspaper and on TV and so forth, they absolutely love it. And they're coming in with sort of snippets out of newspapers and things like that. And obviously, when they get their mugshot in there as well, it's always a really good sort of morale booster. But the other thing the staff absolutely love is the fact that we are manufacturing in Australia. Not only is it a job to them and a livelihood for their families, but it's something that they're all extremely proud of as well. And even within our own business, you can always do something better. I think we could even do a better job of helping even our own staff understand what that actually means. It's more than just manufacturing in our facility. It's the products that we produce in our facility that support another manufacturer down the road or in another state, and that sort of momentum that it actually builds. It builds momentum, and there's more factories that we're supporting as well than what we're doing.
This just shows that what I've been saying over and over again, that collaboration is a key driver. If you're going to boost your local supply chains and encourage others to be involved with the work you're doing, you need to spread that story and spread the word. So
absolutely.
I absolutely agree with you. We might go to our second poll question, Kelly. I hope you're ready for that one. And the question's going to come up for all of you to respond. This one is, how many Australian jobs are directly and indirectly supported by Australian manufacturing? Now, I'm sure that some of you already know this, but have a go at that. Do you think it's 700,000 people? Do you think it's 1.3 million people or 1 million people? How many Australian jobs are directly and indirectly supported by Australian manufacturing? Okay, and we might have a look at that one. Thank you, Kelly. So most people think it's 1.3 million. It seems to me that a lot of you have been reading our research, which is good. But yes, it is. It's 1.3 million people. So it's 10% of the Australian workforce. And so that's a significant number, right? And it's growing. The good news is that manufacturing is creating new jobs, as we're hearing with Ty. the companies are growing. They're growing their export potential, investing in new plant and equipment, and using expertise from people like Peter at Bosch to advance their companies, to look at this digital transformation, everything around Industry 4.0, this digital transformation of the workforce. We talked about spreading the word and talking to your employees, talking to your local communities. I think it's also important to reach out to the media when you think that there might be an article that's maybe, in your opinion, not correct. And I know we've got many journalists joining us here today too, so thanks for joining us. And we're certainly getting greater involvement across trade magazines and newspapers, news like the Financial Review as well. So people are certainly learning more about manufacturing strength here in Australia. But I think it's important to reach out to those journalists and get familiar with them and let them know about your business. And if you see a story that might not be ringing true, it's probably important for you to reach out to them and let them know they can visit your site or have an interview with yourself to correct that story. And so I think it's really important to engage with local media, whether it's the local ABC radio studio. And I know, Mike, we did that when we were visiting Wodonga. We went to the ABC studio there in Wodonga and had a great conversation with the team there. So it's really important to get that message out, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the critical factors. And tying back to what Peter was saying and what Ty said as well about engaging with young people, because if we don't get that engagement and we don't get that really solid message about manufacturing being a growth industry, it's clean, it's got some really good aspects to it, we won't be able to attract those, you know, the smart kids, the clever kids that are going to be so necessary in moving forward. So it's a holistic approach, and it'd be very interesting to see how actually Ty got on with some of those applications, especially with the tool makers and the like, because we do need to focus back on our training as well and bring them forward.
Well, I think it's good. Yeah, we'll ask you that, Ty. And I've got a question here too. So keep those questions coming. So this one's from Colin Thomas, and it's to you, Ty. What do you think is the best way to drive import replacement? Example, make it here instead of importing. Is that manufacturing driven, or is it to be driven by the consumers, the wholesalers, or the retailers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's got to be, it's all of the above. Certainly it starts with consumers. I thought I've said this before, you know, as long as people want a $9 toaster that may only last 6 months, then we're still going to be importing that shit from China and India and so forth. So people need to start valuing the products that they're buying and not just the longevity out of the product, but also the usability. You know, we've shown that it also, like from our perspective, it starts with design. So designing those products that are not just a better product, but also that can be manufactured here cost effectively onshore. So design plays a massive part of that. But you know, we're always in front of wholesalers and retailers alike. We're sitting in front of them day in, day out, talking to them about the value of buying a product that's manufactured locally and starting to replace those imported products. And, you know, starting to pull the levers that make sense to them, which is generally profit-based, but it's also, you know, cash flow-based, it's warranty-based. There's so many other elements that come into why an Australian-made product. It's not just more expensive. Quite often, it's actually more cost-effective to buy locally. It's just going through that process and explaining to all of them. But it requires buy-in from everyone to actually make the change. And yeah, it's been a long journey, but I'm seeing the scales being tipped heavily in our favour at the moment. So if there was ever a time for people to consider switching their supply chain to a locally made option, now's the time, because there's very, very, very few excuses not to do it.
Yeah.
Tom, is it, or Peter, the strength of Australian manufacturing, you know, we've always said that small volumes has been a curse, but in actual fact, in today's environment, the lower volumes and being more flexible, shorter supply chain is certainly now seen as a strength. Do you see that playing out in many of your customers or people on your side, your supply chain?
Yeah, look, was talking to a customer today, and you know, their volumes are absolutely monstrous, and it's a very exciting project. You know, any other day of the week, we're talking to people that are reshoring, you know, 2,000-3,000 units a year. This guy happened to be talking about a couple of million units a year. It is very different. It very much is product by product, and case by case, because each project has the different nuances and reasons why you know, they were currently being made offshore. And again, that's why design. I get back to design so often. You know, we've got to design not just products but solutions for people that make it cost effective for them to bring it back. And unless people are engaging with design and designers and understanding what are the different challenges for a product being made offshore and bringing it back, you've got to understand the reasons. Once you understand the reasons and what levers we can pull on to bring those products back, that's when it all sorts of start to fall in place. But we don't see short volume being a curse, not at all.
No.
It's important to remember that you know, Australian manufacturing contributes $100 billion to the national economy. So, you know, again, 10% of the Australian workforce, but significant impact on the Australian economy overall. So, yeah, over to you, Peter.
Yeah, look, I think I agree totally with Ty. I don't think having the short volume capability in Australia is a curse at all. In fact, it's a major advantage being able to respond quickly. You know, even if you have a really good supply chain from overseas, that you can't supply anywhere near as quickly as someone in the same city or the same state, or, you know, in the same country in Australia can provide. So I think it's not a curse. It's definitely a major advantage being able to buy locally. So yeah, that would be my call on it.
No, that's great. And I've got a couple more questions here for you, Ty. From Fred Esk, for Ty, what was the rough breakdown of the 40 new jobs? Are they in production, engineering, design, marketing, support network? Can you break that down? And secondly, this one's from Holly Walton. Ty, the scales are being tipped in our favour right now. Do you think this will continue post-COVID?
Yep. Okay. Breakdown of the jobs, a bit of everything. Senior project managers, supply chain guys and girls. We've got technicians, so guys and girls actually keeping the machines running. And then obviously, you know, actually packing and labour hands on the production lines. It is that full spectrum across the whole factory. You know, more people in the.
How do you think we will go post-COVID? What's your out view for the next few years? Having said that, the crystal ball's been smashed, hasn't it? So it's hard to forecast. But as to Holly's question, how do you think manufacturing will be post-COVID?
Unbelievable. The customers that got burnt, you know, when back March and April, like, I know how heavily we were affected. Now, I was traveling to China 14 plus times every year, and I've been going there ever since I was a little kid. I truly hope that I never get on a plane to China ever again for the rest of my life. And I do a lot of business with China, and I'm passionate about never going to that country again, ever. Now, there's certain things I may have to buy there, and we may still have to buy some components there. And I was actually reasonably pro-China, albeit going to war with them every day from a manufacturing sense. And I know us getting our fingers burnt, and even how much more difficult it's become to do business there. I'm seeing a lot of other people having exactly the same experience. So I think manufacturing locally was already heading in the right direction. You know, like all the discussions you and I have had, Sharpie, and the rest of the guys and girls in the AMGC, we're already on a bloody good path, and there was a lot of momentum already being built. I think all that COVID's done is just accelerate that and give people so many reasons never to buy locally and not to look offshore. So I think manufacturing locally in Australia and all around the world is going to be it is going to be decentralised. And yeah, as I said, mate, we're doubling down big time.
No, it's an exciting time, there's no doubt, and we've all had to adjust very rapidly. One of the things we did, and I know that you guys registered on the COVID-19 Manufacturers Response Register. So for all of you out there, please have a look at our website at amgc.org.au. You'll see the Manufacturers Response Register, and we've got 3,000 companies have registered their capabilities on that platform. It's open to the public now, and we've been able to connect consumers, be it medical practices or people with their own manufacturing sites looking for medical PPE and a range of other things, can even be emergency hospital beds, right down to hand sanitizer. But the response has been fantastic, and it shows how valuable manufacturing is to Australia. At AMGC, we actually say it's not so much a manufacturing, is not so much a sector, it's actually a nation's capability. What are we capable of making? What are we capable of producing and exporting to the world? You know, we'd much rather see a global audience for Australian products of 7 billion potential customers, in addition to what we have here in Australia. So it's been a hell of a time.
Can I mention one more thing? Sorry, Michael. I was just going to say the other thing that we've seen, which is a big shift, is we're now seeing other countries that weren't necessarily looking to Australia for supply. So we've had a lot of inquiry from the likes of the United States in particular that we're buying from China and that are now actually looking to Australia as being a very cost-effective manufacturer, and obviously politically aligned and whatever else it might be. It's actually looking to Australia, and that's a really interesting concept because world's largest consumer market, very closely aligned with us already, now looking at us as actually a production alternative for them to to the likes of China and possibly even Mexico. I think that's a really exciting place as well.
Yeah. Here's one for everyone, but we might start with Peter. This one's from Kevin McDonald. With the Australian public very much wanting Australian manufacturing to be the main player now, how do we, as a group, particularly the SMEs, get the eyes and ears of the bureaucracy across Australia? How do we reach out to government and let them know about what we're doing? I'm sure you've all got some views on that. But secondly, Colin Thomas is asking, what is the single most effective step that the federal government can take to strengthen Australian manufacturing right now? Peter, have you got some views around that to start with?
Throw the easy ones at me, right? Okay. Look, I think I think in terms of how do we get the politicians behind us and what we're doing and understand, and the Australian public understanding that manufacturing is critical and important to Australia, is we've just got to keep doing more of what we're doing here. And with 250 people listening to this, if we all go out and speak to another 10 people, we're starting to get to a critical mass of getting that across to the wider public. And I think these good news stories that we're talking about, like Ty's business, the good news stories of stuff coming back into Australia. I think everybody thinks that everything is manufactured in China. And like I said, a number of the customers that we're working with are doing some amazing stuff in Australia. And this is the only place in the world that can be done, or that is being done. And it's you take the medical device industry. People like I know they get mentioned a lot. People like ResMed and Cochlear, and there's some really good global businesses that have started in Australia, and they're still manufacturing in Australia.
Oh, very true. And being critical supporters to us locally with the ventilators and other equipment like that too, which is just great. Mike, I guess that shows us how important the case studies are that we've been doing as well. Case studies around the projects that we've been able to co-fund and put those messages out there about the state of play for manufacturing today. They've been pretty important, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's being able to demonstrate to government, going back to that question, that with some very targeted, specific funding, that manufacturers can step up to the mark and we can actually have a huge amount of impact with that. And, I don't think anyone wants the government to be able to fund everything, or, we just want that consistent policy and some degree of assistance where needed, and to support that collaboration with our researchers, with the CRCs and the ARCs, and what both the TAFEs and the universities are doing. So we've got a good stream of research coming through, as well as highly skilled people. But on that, Peter and Ty, what would be that one bit of advice you could give to a manufacturer that would be, that is going to self-promote and say the right, and talk to the audience of the manufacturers we've got out there? What's been the success factor for a Bosch or for an Evolve Group?
Peter?
Classic. Look, I think from our perspective, it's just been about communicate. So whenever is a good news story that we've been involved with or we know about, we just make sure that we communicate that as much as possible to the media. We communicate it to the people that we talk to that come to Bosch. Apart from that, I don't think there's much else that we've been doing. I think it is a problem with Australia and particularly manufacturers is we're always this quiet achiever. We're incredibly innovative, but we keep it quiet, and it doesn't help anybody. We've got to get out there and push the word and say that we're, tell people what we're doing.
Yeah, and Ty, you feature on our Manufacturing Academy. And again, that platform's completely free for anyone. Students can get involved with the Manufacturing Academy for no charge. But to hear people like yourself talk about manufacturing today and the opportunities to build a career. But again, I think it's so important to share those experiences on LinkedIn and on Instagram and through your website. Get that message out, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Our sort of rule that we always talk about is always add value or step out of the way. And we've found that's worked very well for us. So regardless of whether a customer comes in and we've got the solution or not, we like to think we can solve all the world's problems, but sometimes there isn't a fit there. And even if it isn't that half an hour meeting or whatever it might be, that scoping session, we've sort of instilled that value of just always adding value or get out of the way and refer it to someone else in Australia that, or another manufacturer that can. That's worked pretty well. Grunt and resilient. Anyone that's in manufacturing in Australia is still in it, already has plenty of grunt and resilience, I would say, and stick with it, and definitely get that message out there. To Peter's point, Australians are that sort of quiet achiever. I know when people say to you, the old line of, what are you up to? Oh, not much. And you got like the world falling down around you, and you're still saying, there's not much going on. We do need to get out there and be confident in what we're doing, because we are adding a shitload of value. Not only to the economy now, but there's a shitload of value we can manufacturing back, and it's not about price. Price is only one function, and really under those other levers that are within that person's business or their supply chain that can be improved by dealing with an Australian manufacturer. That's the stuff that needs to be screamed from the rooftops.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing pretty well at that, mate. I've got another question here for you, and it's from Colin Thomas, and it's asking, is Australia's manufacturing strength in short-run multi-product flexibility? And I know that you make a range of products. Do you think it's around those short runs, or what's your views on the product, those sort of things?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And, years ago, we did very much focus on that short-run piece. But, we're reshoring at the moment. We're reshoring some big, long-run stuff. Stuff that you would think that if our only value was in short run, that we wouldn't be bringing this stuff back. But we're bringing stuff back from the United States. We're bringing stuff back from Canada. We're bringing a heap of stuff back from Asia. And these are some big, long run stuff. And that's really exciting. On the short run stuff, definitely. And that's where we can add a heap of value. And but also understanding what the customer's supply chain, what are their stock turns and things like that, and really understanding all of that. Because if we just focus on, a customer's only buying 1,000 units of something a year, that's my guy. You tend to miss a lot of the other value that's still left on the table, and you need to pick up all the pieces. Like we're not becoming millionaires in manufacturing overnight. So it's all those little bits of value you pick up along the way that then becomes a package that you're offering to that customer, and that makes you extremely sticky. And once you're in there and you're helping them across that whole, the smiley curve, as the AMGC call it. Once you're adding value across that whole piece, it makes it very, very hard for that customer to say no and also to move their manufacturing elsewhere.
Yeah, full credit to you, mate. I think we've got some slides going to come up now around summing up today's seminar. So how to change the perception. We've talked today about educating yourself and others, update your industry knowledge and your skills around the sector. Certainly visit AMGC's Manufacturing Academy. You'll see Ty sharing his knowledge and how he's built his business over the years. Secondly, be conscious of the language. And I talked about whether you're with a group of mates around the barbecue or if on an ABC radio interview, it doesn't matter. Just be conscious of the language that you're using, talking about the state of manufacturing today and how it is in your business and how you're seeing colleagues and others around the community. It's really important that we share the manufacturing journey with all of our community today. Certainly working with local schools and TAFEs, and Peter touched on that, how Bosch is engaging with local students across Australia, which I think is so important. We need that next generation coming through. So certainly improving awareness and perception of the industry, and we know that it's mutually beneficial, of course it is. And then finally there, let the media know when it is misinformed. We need to get those stories out and we need to make sure those stories are accurate. So again, thanks to all the journalists and publicists that are out there joining us today. Everyone can connect with AMGC and look at our research. Certainly download our latest report, the 10 Ways for Success. Become a member. If you're not already, it's free to join. So get on the website, join AMGC, join us on Twitter and LinkedIn and our YouTube channel, where we'll be putting this seminar up on our YouTube channel later today. For the Academy, log in and learn. You'll see it's such a interactive site where people like Ty and many others have shared their experience, and I fully commend that Academy to you. And I touched on the COVID Manufacturer Response Register. It's been overwhelming, the response to that. So great to get so much involvement, and now the commercial outcomes as well for our members and the broader community. So what a year 2020 has been. Who would have thought we'd talk about anything like a Zoom call? I don't think most of us had heard of Zoom before the start of the pandemic. So look how quickly we've all shifted. I've heard it said that we've seen about 5 years worth of innovation in the last 5 months. And I think that's fairly accurate. The slide you see there now is those 10 ways. And today we've talked about recognising Australia's manufacturing strength. You can see all the other points that we're going to touch on over the coming weeks. So I'm very excited to join you over the next 10 weeks and share this research. Feel free to email and reach out to us at any time over this 10 weeks and ask questions, and we can touch on those at these seminars. We've got a whole range of speakers and members going to be joining us over the coming 10 weeks. So I'm really grateful today to Ty Hermans and Peter Hook for joining us. Grateful for my colleague Mike Grogan, unfortunately still in lockdown in Victoria, but glad you could join us, mate. And so look forward to seeing you all next week. I'm not sure where I'll be, but I know that I'll be in the car. And so look forward to joining you all same time, same place next week. But for now, I'm in Mittagong in regional New South Wales, and I'm going to drive down to the main street and find out where the local pie shop is. So thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.